Connecting. We're good. All right. Welcome, everyone. Snow White, come up here. We got Snow White wants to join.
Oh, cool.
And Snow White, I don't know if you guys saw the last time, but she was right at Janine's feet when she was doing her grounding exercise. It was quite, we were trying not to be very distracted by her, but she was just like doing her roll and everything right at Janine's feet. So it was quite fun.
Yeah, I need attention.
So welcome. This is part 2 of, well, you know, we never did explain why we're calling it mucking on the right side of the brain. And I'm just wondering if you guys even know why that is called that, why we're calling it that.
Linda had some ideas about that.
Linda.
Because that's the sort of the relaxation kind, the calming, intuitive side of the brain is, which is how you want to be with the animals.
There you, yeah. So I don't know if you got any artists are in the audience, but there's a book called Drawing on the Left Side of the Brain, or right side, right? Drawing on the right side of the brain. So it's all about, you know, why we can't draw because we're thinking of a hand, and in our head we've got this picture of a hand, you know, because of our language. And then we draw it the way we think we remember it, but instead of actually looking and seeing and observing and noticing shadows and stuff. So actually drawing upside down helps, and drawing the shadows instead of the light, you know, helps to just sort of force us to get into the other side of the brain. And so that's something I've been practicing for a long time, is getting out of my left brain and into my right brain, and getting more, you know, just in touch. That's where the animals, you know, are. That's where we can relate more to the animals, I think.
That's where they live.
Kind of why we, you know, came up with that as our title for this thing, is to get out of our talking rational brain and into our more creative side. And so without further ado, oh, I do want to apologize. I didn't put out the homework assignment from last time, which was to come up with some signage that would help to ground us. So I thought, well, we can work on that. We will, you know, it's ongoing because we don't have things going on here very much. And but we'll, you know, I'll put that out after this. We'll get the recordings of these 2 that Janine has done. So maybe when that goes out, and then we'll put some, you know, thinking about it, because we're going to have homework from this one too. So, all right. So I'm just going to get Janine to start right away, and we'll try to stay dry. And anything else anything anybody want to say? Anybody want to share? Because you won't be able to talk after this. At this point, I don't think. Anybody want to say anything to anybody
Great
else?
to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's great.
I agree.
Connect, you know, it's
Connect with everybody. Yes.
I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot more of these too. We can do a lot more if we don't have to coordinate people getting here and stuff. So
Right.
This is fun.
Great idea.
So,
Chris,
all right. What?
Chris,
Yeah.
are you thinking the farm will not have anyone there for the summer? Like,
So no, we're not thinking that, but I mean, they have opened up to in-person counseling things too. So I'm hoping to get teens here on a one-to-one basis. But the transportation part is going to be the challenge, is getting them here. So if I can work that out, but yeah, so I think the one-on-one at the farm with the animals, there's clearly, it's so easy to have distance and stuff. And so that's what I'm working on first, but we haven't gotten, you know, we're hoping we can have groups here in the summer, but we don't, you know, we have to play that by ear. So yeah.
I just noticed that the kitchen door is open in the barn. Are there any animals out wandering around?
Oh, yeah, look at that. No, they're not. Yeah, no, they're not. Wow, what an eye. What a true volunteer, right? Well, we had all the animals out yesterday. So we had horses, cows, goat, and sheep all together.
Oh, yeah. It was fun.
And
And they-
you guys left, and then Heather and I and who else was here? Oh, Marilyn.
Yeah.
And we had to get them all back together, and that was a challenge.
Yeah, as I
The
was driving,
horses were back in where the sheep are, eating all that beautiful long
How did-
grass. It
yeah.
was great.
Oh, the horses and cows stayed in the goat yard all day. So we had to get them out before we fed the goats. But then you can't, if you bring out any food, Barney's going to try to get it. And so it was a bit of
A
as
zoo.
I was
Animal
driving
action.
out, I wondered how that was going to
yeah,
play
I was
out.
going to call you guys back. You're like, let's let them all out. And then I'm like, all right. And then you're going to go home. And
And then we leave.
yeah, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Yeah, but it was fun. Anyway, all right, moving on. Here's Janine. Drum roll.
Great. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so just as we get started here today, what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of time to just go over kind of what we did last time in our practice, and then we'll jump right into today's practice. And so we are going to be doing a little bit of experimental anatomy, as well as learning a little bit of a breath practice today. So just kind of be prepared for that. And then what I'm going to do in a moment here, I'm going to put you all on mute, and then at points during our class together today, I'm actually going to unmute you, and you're going to have the opportunity to kind of answer some questions for me. Okay, so give me a moment and we'll go ahead and do that. So if you give me a thumbs up that you can all hear me really well, thank you. All right, fantastic. And then I'm just going to put everybody on mute. Okay. All right. Let's see. And it is not allowing me to do that. Everyone. Okay. All right. So it's being strange technology, of course. There we go. All right. All right. So
We can mute ourselves as well.
Yeah.
maybe if we could ask participants. There we go. Okay. Mute all. All right. Good. All right. Good. Thank you. All right. So how often have we heard that saying that we are all one? I think we hear this many, many times throughout our lives, but really, what does it mean? What are the implications of we are all one? And do we often think of this as all one as just representing us as human beings and that we're connected to other human beings? But in many traditions, and many ancient traditions and some scientific traditions, the belief is that we go beyond just a connection to other human beings, that this really notion of we are all one is really represented in the elements. And what we mean by the elements is really the basic 5 elements. So the elements of fire, the elements of earth, the elements of air, the elements of gas or ether, as well as the elements of fire. And many traditions believe that we have in each and every one of us that we have a makeup of these elements. So in traditions such as Ayurvedic medicine, as well as Chinese medicine, they really believe that each and every one of us, again, has these elements inside of us. And it's really interesting because even though it may seem a little far-fetched of I have the elements inside of me, it's interesting that we actually use this language to even describe other people quite often. We say things like, oh, he's such a hothead. Right? They have that fiery personality. Or we'll say things like, oh, she's always so spaced out. Right? Or that person always really goes with the flow. So this sort of idea that we are the elements is really kind of part of our languaging, and we've sort of gotten away from this. Again, when we go back into, traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, what they really say is that each and every one of us, again, has this makeup, and some people are more fiery, some people are more watery and earthy, whereas other people are more air. And I think each of us have maybe experienced that I mean, have you ever seen some crazy person walking around in a pair of shorts in the wintertime and you think to yourself, what are you doing? Right? And what that person is doing is they have a lot of fire inside of them, that they don't really feel the cold like other people. Or we can meet somebody else that is really earthy, that is really naturally grounded, that really has that sort of denseness about them, and they really are plod along and take their time. Or we meet people in our lives that are rather airy, that they just are always kind of, to and fro and to and fro. So when we kind of think of this notion that we are the elements, what it does, it helps us to really connect to not only ourselves in a very different way, but it also begins the notion that we are part of the natural world, that we are animals, just as the animals here are on the farm. And even the animals, if you kind of step back and look at a larger picture, even the animals will have sort of notions of elements within them as well. And so this notion, again, of really helps us to think of more of the global community, that we have all of this inside of us, and that every living creature has that. Now, when we talk about the elements, there's one element in particular that really has the most effect on not only us, but on every living organism. And this element is the element of water. And so we know that almost 70% of an adult is water. And interesting, babies are about 80% water. But as adults, we are about 70% water. And it's kind of interesting that the earth is actually about 70% water. So it's kind of a funny sort of thing to think about that. And that really the Earth's community of beings, whether it be human, animal, microbial, or botanical, we are all united by the common bond of water. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, that how profound water really is to us as human beings. And inside the physical body of a human being, really water plays such an important thing that it's often even represented as our emotional body. And it kind of makes sense, we cry when we're super happy, or we cry when we're super sad. But water plays such an interesting thing, and the qualities of water are so fascinating, what the water really does for us, and on a physical and spiritual, emotional, and even on a mental plane, what water does. So water is like no other element, okay? As we talked about, that there's earth and all that stuff. So water itself has very different qualities to it. One of the most interesting qualities is really that it conducts electricity. So last time we talked about how breath really brings energy into our bodies, and it is the water inside of our body that helps to transfer this energy within inside of us. And it's very interesting. I'm an emotional freedom technique practitioner, and what we do is we really use the meridian points through the body to help to transform the mind. And what can happen is that if someone isn't hydrated, the technique doesn't work. So what I always do to start a practice is actually get someone to have a glass of water, because when somebody is hydrated, the energy in the body moves better. So we need to drink more water, okay, but good quality water. Water is also very, very sensitive to vibration. If we just look at the elements in front of us and what would be the most sensitive to vibration, it would really be water. Water also really is all around us. Like we're in water right now. It's lightly raining behind me, that it has this sort of very deep way of transforming us, that we're deeply affected by the water around us, as through our climate and through the weather. But we can also really think of water and more on that spiritual or mystical side, and that many sages and spiritual people have been using water and the qualities of water for really spiritual practices for millennia. They've been using it for the dimensions of purification, protection, healing, and that really that water sustains and really helps to clear and cleanse us on all levels of us. Some other interesting things about water is that it's living. And we don't often really think of water as living, but if you've ever been near a stagnant pond, you can really understand that water is a living thing, and that if we think about that inside of our bodies, if we are 70% water, that water needs to be living. And so what that would kind of mean that is that how does water die? And one of the big things is that when it's stagnant, when it's still, when it's not moving. And so that's why movement is so important to us as human beings. If you think about it kind of in that way, like why exercise, why move, why get out of the house and come to the farm, is really because this living inside of us of these elements that really help to keep us alive, because water really sustains us. So we talked last time about how important breath is, and that we really only can, you know, hold our breath for about 2 minutes. And with water, we can only go about a week without drinking water before the body starts to die very quickly. So when we can really approach, we got some chickens in the background here. I'm talking about the water in the background here. If you can really sort of think of yourself more as not so much in the brain as a thinking human being, but instead think of yourself as that sort of more elemental animal. If you think of yourself in these very basic forms, really what it helps us to do again is to really connect to animals on a deeper, more profound level. Because really what they're discovering is as well is that water is an incredible vehicle for consciousness. So that's kind of interesting. And in 2014, the Cambridge had a declaration of consciousness, and what they've discovered is all animals have the exact same substrates within their brains to have consciousness. And this is whether it's octopuses or fish or birds, that we as human beings do not have the corner on consciousness that all living beings have that. So last time we were together, we really talked about, you know, being in the feet. And that kind of makes sense of being a little bit more grounded. And today what we want to talk about is how to really connect to this element of water inside of us to help us connect better to the animals that we're treating. And that really emotions are really emoted through water, and that's the same with the animals. And that really talking about vibration and intention, and how that really affects not only ourselves, but also affects the animals that we are working with. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple different practices together. And one of the practices that we're going to do is we're going to learn how to breathe in a beautiful breath. And this is borrowed from a yoga practice, and it's called Ujjayi breath or ocean breath. And it's a really beautiful practice to really help to calm us down and to really help to focus our mind. That's really one of the other beautiful things about water, is it can be very, very calm. I think we all know that. How good does it feel to go, you know, take a hot bath when you're having a rough day, or that wonderful feeling of stepping into a nice hot shower and how refreshed and wonderful we feel. So we're going to be teaching you this breath called Ujjayi breath or ocean breath today. Now, before we get started, please note that breath practices don't always work for everybody. Sometimes simply changing your breath can be too much for you today. So you just want to take note of that. If this doesn't work for you, or if it doesn't feel good for you, just leave it aside. Okay, so all right, so what we'll do is we'll learn how to do the exhale first, and we'll take a few moments with that to learn how to do this particular breath, and then we'll keep going from there. Okay, so the first thing that we want to practice is like we were fogging up the mirror. So if I had a mirror in front of me, and you can do this with me, bring your hand out in front of you. And what you want to imagine is like you were fogging up a mirror. So you want to make this little restriction on the back of the throat, and it's like a like you were trying to fog up the mirror. Okay, so do that a couple times. Now do it again, and do it as long as you can. So take a really big in breath, and then as long as you can. Okay, so put that aside now and see if you can do the exact same thing with your mouth closed and still making that gentle little restriction on the back of the throat. So let's give it a try. So take an inhale, and when you exhale, now it might feel strange, so let's try it again. Inhale. Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and find out why it's called ocean breath. So take both of your hands and very lightly cup them over top of your ears. And you're going to take that inhale for me again. And what you're going to do is you're going to practice that exhale and tell me what it sounds like. So taking that nice inhale again. And as you exhale with that beautiful sound, what does it sound like? And what you might find, what it sounds like, is the shell at the ocean. It sounds exactly like that. I think we've all done that as children. We put a shell up, and you can actually hear that in the background. Now, there's also can be done on an inhale, this particular breath of ocean breath. The inhale is a little harder for a lot of people, so if it doesn't work for you, you can definitely leave this aside. Now, how you do this particular breath on an inhale is like you were sucking the breath in through a straw. So it's like a, and you can see even my throat does that. Like if you had a, you were trying to get your smoothie at the bottom of the glass. So if I close my mouth, you can hear it. It's a, right at the back of the throat. Okay, so let's give that a try. Just the inhale on its own a few times. Just inhale. Now, I really sucked in hard, but you can try it in a much softer way. Just a nice simple inhale. And just exhale normally. And again. And one more time. Okay, perfect. So it's pretty normal to feel a little bit dizzy or a little bit spaced out when you do breath practices. So as we come through this practice, and we'll do it for a few moments together, if you find like you're out of breath or that you're getting a little spaced out, just stop and take a regular breath. So one of the really powerful practices, benefits of this particular practice is that it's really focusing for the mind. It really helps us to really pinpoint and stay completely present. And we talked last time that to be present is how we really connect with the animals. And so this particular breath can really help to calm us down and to really help us to focus before we even start with the animals. Now, I've done breath practices around animals. I've also done vibrational practices around animals. And let me tell you, they react. They are very interested when you make a particular sound, especially dogs. They really are curious about what you're doing, okay? So let's go ahead and really give this a try. And again, one of the other wonderful benefits, not only does it focus the mind, but it has a profound calming effect on us. And again, such a great way to be before we work with the animals. Okay, so we're going to take about 2 or 3 minutes with this particular breath, and then I'm going to unmute everybody. And then if there's any feedback or any questions about this breath, we can talk about that together. Okay, so whenever you're doing breath practices, you want to be able to sit up nice and tall and just get yourself completely comfortable. And then just close your eyes for a moment and kind of think to yourself, how do you feel in this moment today? Are you feeling busy? Do you have a lot of things on your mind today? Are you feeling the effects? Are you feeling overwhelmed or isolated? Or maybe you feel wonderful today. All you want to do is just notice, how do I feel in this moment right here, right now? So just close your eyes for a moment and just notice. Now, if the inhale felt okay for you, we're going to start with that inhale. Remember, it's like sucking a breath through the back of a straw. And when you exhale like you were fogging that mirror. Let's keep going. Inhale, ocean breath. Exhale, ocean breath. A few more. And the longer that exhale is, the calmer we can become. A few more. All right, last 2. Gently open up your eyes and just notice how that feels and what happened. And then if anything has changed for you in just that few moments of that practice. So I've unmuted everyone if there's any feedback or questions or comments on that particular breath.
Extremely calmed down.
Yeah.
Way different, just mellow.
Yeah. Yeah. And how quick was that?
Yeah, it was quick.
It was very, very quick. It was very quick.
You know what it did for me is it put me right back in the water snorkeling.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
That sound of your breathing is so relaxing when you're snorkeling.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, there's something so magical about water to us as human beings. We resonate with it so deeply inside of us. And we may not even notice. It's funny. I have a really good friend of mine that lives in Tofino.
What are you listening
and
to?
he laughs because he said, I hear people say to me all the time, I just want to come to the peaceful, wonderful ocean.
At the farm.
He said,
And
he says,
with looking after the animals.
The ocean is not peaceful. The ocean is anything but peaceful. The ocean is loud. The ocean is crashing. The ocean is sending in all the time.
Karen, you're not muted.
Karen, you're mute.
But yet we feel that. Yeah.
Karen, your mute's not on.
Your mute's not on, Karen.
How to be with an animal.
That's
Then
okay.
Your
Sorry.
mute's not on, Karen.
Yeah, we're going to mute everybody in a moment here too, right? But again, kind of going back to that story of my friend in Tofino, that it's funny, but we actually will say, I go to the ocean to find peace, to find quiet. But when you actually get to the ocean, the sounds are incredible. And what I find, it's not that it's necessarily peaceful, but it actually is so loud that it drowns out the sounds in your head. And that's one of the other great qualities of this particular breath, this ocean breath. It can drown out the noise.
Right.
And so when I'm feeling overwhelmed, or if I'm getting ready to meditate and I'm really struggling to meditate that day, what I'll actually do is this Ujjayi breath for a little while, and it just is like a laser. It just pinpoints me so quickly, and then I'm ready for it. And it really, again, kind of reminds me of who we truly are. That I'm not, my job, I'm not, all these sort of responsibilities and hats that I put on every single day. It just reminds me that I am part of everything, that I am the elements, I am part of the earth, and that we are all one. And it really helps to bring that comfort, because when we really think about all the things that are going on in the world right now, and how we feel sometimes out of control with those things, the brain just gets so overwhelmed. And just by remembering the truth of who we really are and our role here, that we are stewards of this earth, and all your wonderful volunteers are even stewards of the animals here at the farm, and that really is our role, and it gives us purpose. Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody again, and we're going to do one of my other little favorite practices together. If you want and you have the opportunity to lie down for a few moments, you can do that. But if you don't, I will give you another alternative. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. And okay, and then plug ourselves back in. So this next practice is really a wonderful practice, and I use this particular practice to actually get to sleep at night. And it's a wonderful technique even to use for stage fright. So believe it or not, I actually used this little technique before I came on camera here today. And you can either, again, lie down if that works for you. Or one of the other things that you can do is you can either take one or two hands, and you're just going to place it right at the back of the brain. Okay, so in a few moments we'll do that. So as we talked about a few moments ago, that really the body is about 70% water. But there are parts of us that are even more, and in particular the brain is over 80% water. So this big thinking thing up here is actually mostly liquid. So what we want to begin to imagine is almost as if the brain, not your mind, but the actual organ of the brain is liquid, almost like a water balloon. So I'm actually holding a water balloon here today. And if you imagine holding on to a water balloon, what you should sort of feel is how the water actually pools right into my hand. And if I roll my hand around like this in any which way, that water begins to really pool around with me. So what we want to start to think of is the actual brain and the water in the brain. So I'm going to invite you to either lie down or to take both your hands onto the back of your head. And even though this may seem rather sort of metaphysical in what we're doing, scientifically, we're actually dropping back into the limbic brain, which is really where our fight or flight and that primal brain is really set off. So by doing this particular practice, hopefully the results will be that you feel much calmer. Okay, so I'm going to do it this way, but again, if you want, you can lie down. And then what you want to start to think of is, and close your eyes, is your brain. And so the brain, if you can imagine, fills up the entirety of your skull. And the actual physical brain weighs around 4 pounds. And if you can imagine, the majority of that weight is water. So begin to picture in your mind's eye holding on to that water balloon as I showed you a moment ago. And begin to imagine your brain to be like that water balloon. And begin to imagine that you could drop all the water from your brain back into your hand. And take a few moments with this. How could you do that? How could you begin to let go and drop everything back? Imagine dropping your thoughts. Imagine dropping your concerns. Imagine dropping any emotions. Imagine just letting it all go. Any worries, any feelings of being overwhelmed. And if it feels good, maybe you even add in that ocean breath. And how heavy can you make your brain? Could you drop it back as deeply as you can into your hands? A few more minutes. Good, a few more breaths. Okay, let's take 3 more breaths together. And then just letting that go and come back into our space. And how was that for you? So you're unmuted if you have any questions.
I felt totally relaxed.
Great. Yeah, wonderful. So I've done this particular practice with my private clients. And I've done it with a lot of my overthinkers, okay? So we know who we are, right? These overthinkers. And what I've done is I sat behind them and they were lying down and I actually put my hands behind their head. And I asked them to do exactly what we just did, this practice of imagining the brain to be like that water balloon. And it's fascinating because the weight of the head almost doubles. Like I actually can feel the weight of the head drop into my hands and it's profound. And then what I've done is then I ask the person to start to worry and overthink. And you wouldn't believe this, but the brain and the whole head becomes lighter. It's almost as if that thought, that intention pulls us out and pulls us and directs us ahead, and we get all in the frontal lobe right here into that frontal part of the brain. And then in that next moment, I ask them to come back into that balloon brain and I can actually feel them drop back into my hands again. And so this is a really wonderful technique to actually use just about anywhere. So I mentioned you could use it for stage fright. But even if you were going into something and you were a little bit nervous, you could just place your hand at the back of your head like that and do this practice, you know, and if you added that Ujjayi breath, you can feel how quickly it really changes. Or what I mentioned before, this is a beautiful technique to really help us to get to sleep at night, that it really drops us back and is profoundly relaxing. And it really reminds us about how watery we really are. and really the qualities that we can learn from water. Good. Any questions on any of that? Good. Okay. Would you use it, that technique?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Especially for sleep. Yeah.
Try it at night, yeah.
Is
Yeah,
that
just
called the water? What's that technique called?
I call it balloon brain. That's not a very technical term, but you could use water on the brain or anything like that, right? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's really interesting, but if you really think about it, we talked a lot last time about body language, but what is one of the things that somebody says, yeah, I'm going to kick back and enjoy the weekend. I just kicked back and enjoyed the weekend. Isn't that interesting? That's actually something that we do naturally. You see people do this all the time. Yep, it's time for a cold one, right?
Yeah.
And they're actually dropping back into that more primal, or what we would call more the fight or flight part of the brain, this limbic system, and that where a lot of the emotions even lie, right? On a side note, they've done some interesting studies that really even trauma or even the thoughts of trauma actually change right here at C1 and C2. So the first two vertebrae actually shift, and the back of the brain changes itself with even the thoughts of trauma. And that when that happens, the fluidity through the brain and how that cerebral spinal fluid is meant to bathe the brain and bathe the nervous system shifts. So that's some brand new studies coming out, and unfortunately I don't have the name of the doctor that's doing that, but hopefully I'll have that for you soon. And that's just a brand new research that's coming out, that even just the thoughts change how we are and who we are, and interesting enough, the liquid in the body. Okay.
Is that similar to the craniosacral
Yes.
therapy?
Yeah, you got it. Because in craniosacral practice, if you've ever had it, where they hold you is in the back of the brain, and that really this cerebral spinal fluid has its own rhythm. It has its own pulse that is actually underneath the pulsing of the heart. And that in that particular practice, what they do is try to free that, and that they know that even the structures within the brain can actually change through damage, and that affects every single part of us. So if you know anybody that has a lot of trauma or anything like that, and they've been doing studies with people with PTSD and stuff to actually get a craniosacral practice done, and that it can be quite profound for them. Yeah. And it really starts to make sense that when we kind of look at this forward head posture, and I'll turn sideways, and we know the one. Right? And this is where we find the majority of people that we're looking down, that unlike a lot of other things that happen in our bodies, when something is going on in the neck, it actually affects us emotionally and cognitively. And that strange things like chronic headaches, issues with your teeth, issues with your sinuses, issues with your eyes, issues with your skin and your hair, can really be brought back into this forward head posture. And that when I see people come, and when I work with people that are in this chronic forward head posture, what I often can really notice about that person is that they're too much in their head, and that they are disconnected from their physical bodies. So when we see that all the time, there's profound consequences to really, in that posture, that cerebral spinal fluid is actually impinged in these particular postures, and that can have an effect. Even how much information we retain, and our memory as well. So it's really great to drop back in it like that, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put us on mute again, and if anybody has any questions before I do that. Wonderful, okay, so I'm gonna plug back in and then go ahead and mute everyone again. All right, so. So one of the really interesting research that has really been done on water, and that really, like I said at the beginning, sages and mysticals have known the power of water. And even in many religions, they actually use water. We use water as being baptized. We think of it in that way. Or when we walk into church, holy water, and we can really think of it in that way. But leading research called Masuri Emoto, what he did is he actually was able to use modern instruments to really find the metaphysical properties of water. And he wrote a book called The Messages from Water, which was featured in the film What the Bleep Do We Know? And if you've never seen the film before, that is one I highly recommend. It's a little hard to find, but it's called What the Bleep Do We Know? And many leading people are on it, such as Bob Proctor and Dr. Joe Dispenza. And so it's a really wonderful film to find. Now, what he began to study was how the human vibrational energy, such as emotions, words, ideas, thoughts, and music, have a profound effect on the molecular structure of water. And what he did is he froze water in particular states and put them under the microscope and studied what these particular molecules of water look like after they had been exposed. So this is maybe a little bit hard to see, and I know it's going to be backward for you, but in this particular, yeah, it's not showing up very good, and you can definitely do more research. But what he did, you can see here, I know this is backwards, but he labeled a jar of water with the word thank you, wisdom, and all that stuff. And then you can see at the bottom here, this one here, this was before polluted water, and then afterwards. So he did a test with polluted water and put it underneath a microscope. And then afterwards, he had a monk bless the water, the same water, and what it looked like afterwards. And then the evil, and then the thought of you make me sick. So what he did is that he took particular jars of water and labeled them with emotions of love and you make me sick and all that kind of stuff. And he then afterwards again froze the structure of water and noticed that they're different. And one of the other tests that he did, he took 3 jars, and what he did is he put rice in the jars, and he filled each and every one with the same amount of rice and 3 jars with the same amount of water. And what he did is he labeled one of the jars of I love you, one of the other jars as you fool, and the other jar he completely ignored. And what he did for 30 days is every single day he went and talked to the I love you jar, and he spoke kindly to it. I love you, you're wonderful. And then of course the jar that was labeled you fool, he spoke negatively to it and said things like you fool or you're worthless. Basically he bullied it, okay? He bullied it. And then the other water he completely ignored. He never looked at it, and he purposely turned himself away from the water. Now, he had no idea what would happen, but the interesting thing is after 30 days, he brought the jars back together, and what he discovered was that the jar that was labeled I love you had fermented beautifully, that the rice and the water had absorbed, the rice had absorbed all the water, and it went into a really wonderful fermentation process, and that it was alive and living. Now, what he found with the water that he bullied is that it had actually begun to rot. He said that it stank terribly and that it actually began to have black mold on it. Now, the water that he completely ignored, which he was really fascinated by, had all of the things that the bullying water had had, but the mold and the amount of rot and stink was actually a little bit more. And so it's surprising because what he really discovered is it's not only the words and the thoughts, but even the lack of words and thoughts, that how profound bullying can be, but how profound being completely ignored can be as well. That in life, if you are constantly feel like you don't matter, that has a profound effect on the water. And if you've ever seen the little study that was done, that they took 2 plants into a high school, I don't know if you've seen this, and one of the plants was had a microphone, or both of them did, and there were words of positivity being constantly told to the plant, like, you're beautiful, you're so green, we love you, you know, you're there for us. And then the other plant was bullied, you know, things like, you don't matter, we don't like you. And what had happened after 30 days, and it's absolutely surprising, that the water that was being bullied, the plant that was being bullied was near death at the end of 30 days. And they had the exact same amount of fertilizer, the exact same amount of dirt. They were fed water even, but it was just that intention that really profoundly changed things for that. So when we kind of drop back and look at the more global picture, the idea behind it is that our thoughts, our words, our intention, and even what we listen to and what we watch can have a profound effect on who we are at a molecular structure. It's interesting, I was working with a particular client many years ago, and she was a very young woman, but she really suffered terribly from anxiety. And we had been working together for a few weeks, and we're doing lots of different things to alleviate that. But interesting, I just out of the blue said to her, well, what kind of TV shows do you watch? At the end of the night, she goes, well, Janine, I love crime shows. Okay, and I love horror movies. And I thought, aha, there's the culprit, because we were trying to eliminate everything. What's your diet like? What are you sleeping like? What's your work like? What's your relations like? We were pulling back all these layers to try to figure out, why is this underlying emotion of anxiety there all the time. And she seemed, wasn't really too open to me suggesting that she don't watch these kind of shows for a while, but she was desperate. So I had said to her, okay, that's it, you're cut off from all your crime shows and no more horror movies, and really be very cautious about what type of music you listen to for this next 2 weeks, and just let's see what happens. It's just an experiment. And interesting enough, something shifted. Because what she didn't realize, that even though she enjoyed the crime show, so she really enjoyed the investigative part of it, it appealed to her analytical brain. She really liked that part of it, because when she was watching these shows, she was always trying to figure out who done it, right? But what she didn't realize is that watching violence, watching anger, watching these really dense emotions really had that effect, that they affected the water and they lowered the vibration within inside of her body. And so we can really start to sort of think in that way. And if we go back to the animals, that really our intention and our thoughts can really translate out much farther than we think. And that if we think of that global way that we are all of us are the elements, including the plants, including the microbes, the animals. And it's that water that unites all of us, that maybe when we go to work with the animals, that our intention and our thoughts might be a little bit different than they would normally be. So what I'm going to do now is, in a moment here, I'm going to bring my trusted assistant onto the film. And we're actually going to be doing a little bit of testing with water right here and right now. And so before he comes on to the film, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is something called applied kinesiology, or muscle testing. Now, this particular method does not necessarily work with everyone. So I want you to know that right now. If you try this out at home and you think, what was that lady talking about? This doesn't work for me. I want you to know that that's perfectly normal. Now, my assistant, David, is actually a very energetically sensitive person like me. And so he's a great person to actually represent this particular test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold 2 jars of water up to David, and you can see, so I want you to show this, okay, that these are 2 seemingly exactly the same glasses of water, but 1 glass of water is actually tap water, and 1 glass of water is actually really great spring water, okay? And what I'm going to test is how his body reacts to the water. And so what I'm going to do, again, is something called muscle testing. And I'm going to show you that what I'm going to do with David here in a moment is I'm going to tap into his subconscious brain, and I'm going to ask him some questions. Then I'm going to test him to see how his body reacts to the water. And then we'll we'll do that first, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Okay, so here is David for me, and we're going to get him to come on to film here. And I know it might be a little bit hard to see. So what he's going to do is David's going to put his arm out in front of me here. And what I'm going to ask him to do is to relax his arm, and he's going to have a little bit of resistance, but what I don't want him to do is to try to death grip his arm, okay? So he's not trying to hold on to it as hard as he can. He's just going to let the feeling of whatever it is to really come up, okay? So David's going to put his arm out for me. And what he's going to state for me is something very obvious that his body and his subconscious knows to be true. And what he's going to say for me is his name. So you can go for it.
David.
Okay, so he said his name is David. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push. And you can see there's a resistance here when he's pushing, okay? And he's not really over efforting. That's really important. Okay, so now what I'm going to get David to do is to say his name is something completely different, and his subconscious and his conscious mind will know that's not true. Okay, so your name is?
George.
George, okay, so he said my name is George. And let's see what happens, okay? So, now, I know that might seem a little bit strange, but what is happening is that the whole being of David knows that that statement of I am George is not correct. And so his body will weaken with that notion, okay? And definitely, I could spend the next hour really talking to you about muscle testing and this applied kinesiology, but just for now, to just see in it demonstrating. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask David to actually hold these 2 glasses of water up to his solar plexus. Now, David has no idea which water is the really great spring water or which one is the tap water, but we'll see if we can tell together, okay? So here we go. All right, so he's going to take this glass of water and hold it up to his solar plexus, okay? And so the reason that we chose the solar plexus to hold this as is because that's really our center of power within the physical body, okay? So we're gonna give that a little push, and you can see that he has some resistance to me, okay? All right, so let's switch that out. And now we're going to add this second glass of water. Okay, arm up. You ready? And So, which one? Yeah. So David had a comment there, so we'll put him on microphone so he can say that to you. Okay. Okay. So what did you say?
It gets me every time. It just baffles me.
Yeah. So he's surprised by that reaction. So which one do you think was the tap water? Exactly. So what that really is telling me, that tap water is not good for David. Okay. So I've never done this before, full disclosure, this next part, and I have no idea if it's going to work, but we know that this particular jar, okay, and we'll show you the lid, okay, is the jar of tap water. So let's try it one more time so we can prove it. We're going to put it to his solar plexus, and we're going to give him that applied. Okay, and you can see how weak he is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to get David to go back off camera with this jar of water. And what we're going to get him to do is we are going to get him to, and he has a choice. He can either talk nicely to the water, he can tell it he loves it, okay? And we can be silly. He can pray over the water. He can hum to the water. He can play some music for the water. He can do whatever he wants. So I'm going to let him go off camera here for a little while. We'll give him some time with this water. He can say a blessing, he can say prayer, he can bring in an intention. If you know Reiki or quantum touch, he can do a little bit of Reiki or quantum touch, but he's just going to put a little bit of intention into this water, and we're going to see what happens. I have no idea if this is going to work. I did not try this at home, but we're just going to see what happens. Okay? All right. So this is the part now that we're going to put it back to you as the volunteers and to give you a little bit of homework. So the last time we asked you to come together, the homework really was about how can we become more grounded and present before we walk into the enclosure of the animals. So what we talked about is really body language and how standing in a particular way really emotes a sense of trust, a sense of strength, and really that the animal can rely on us. And that when we're standing tall in our body, we also have that sense of confidence. And what it also does, it really puts the brain into that place that helps us connect to the animals, because animals are present 100% of the time. They really are. Now, when we go back to that Cambridge Declaration, we know now that animals are sentient beings. Animals have the ability to make personal choices. They have preferences. And if you're an animal owner, you know this, right? They like certain food, they like certain people, but they're also very, very sensitive to the environment around them. Now, unfortunately, we may not have a choice to give our animals beautiful spring water all the time, that we have no choice but to give them that tap water. But what we want to really talk about and hopefully prove here in a few moments, that giving an intention to the water can actually help to change the vibration for the animals. Now, I have witnessed this before with one of my clients. So I work with both animals and with people. And one of my clients has a cat, and she brought a brand new kitten into the family, and her cat was not happy. He was like the older sibling that, you know, how dare you bring another baby into this family? And they had a couple weeks of just really, really not great behavior. You know, the adult cat became extremely despondent and really started backing away from her mom. And so what I suggested to her was to really make the cat feel super, super special. And at first she was like, okay, this is so weird, Janine, what are we doing? And what I suggested to her was to put a beautiful love note underneath her water bowl. Now, again, she felt strange about this, but sure enough, she called me back a few days later and actually said, you know what? Something's different. Her cat started acting a little bit different. And so this is the homework to you as the volunteers, is to make love notes for the animals. Now, for a moment, I want you to think of your very favorite animal on the farm. Who do you really, really connect with on the farm? Even if you don't work with any of the animals, I'm sure all of us really feel a little bit more compassion or love towards one of the animals. So maybe you're a horse person or a cat person, or maybe you really like one of the sheep. So think for a moment, if you were to write on a piece of paper to that particular animal to convey your appreciation about who they are as a sentient being, what could you say to them on a piece of paper? So would you say, you're amazing, I love you, you're outstanding, you are all these wonderful things to me. Maybe when I'm around you, you're calming, you make me feel good, all these things, whatever they might be to you. Now, that's part of the homework. The other part is, I want you to think of an animal on the farm that maybe you don't like so much. Or maybe it's an animal that you just don't feel connected with. So maybe you love all of them equally, but maybe there's an animal on the farm that you haven't had the opportunity to make a heartfelt connection with as of yet. And I would encourage you to even write a love note to that animal. That, what would that intention mean to that particular animal? Maybe there's an animal on the farm that's really suffering. Maybe they're in pain. Maybe they're dying. Maybe they feel isolated. Maybe they're hurt. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they're jealous. Maybe they're a lot of these things. And what would it mean if you, from the volunteer, gave them that little piece of love? You told them how much you appreciate them, and that you tapped into that fundamental way that we are the same as them as the water. And what would that really mean? And would that change things for them? Because remember, the animals on the farm are not just here for us to take care of, but part of their job is to actually help children and youth that are at risk. So they play dual roles, so that if we as the volunteers build them up, show them how much we appreciate them, put out thoughts of love and compassion and all of that stuff, would it help them to become better therapy animals? Would it help them to do their job better? Okay, so that is really part of our homework. Okay, so here we go. We're going to see if our test worked and give it a try with David over here. And so off screen, I don't know what he's been doing, and that part doesn't really matter. I mean, he could be playing music to it, he could be silly, he could be singing, he could be I love you, whatever it might be. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get him to put down that glass of water. Okay, and I'm going to bring our other water, and we're going to get him to do our I am David again. Okay, so
David?
okay, say it one more time.
My name is David.
Okay, and there you go. Okay, so now again, he's going to say,
My name is Bob.
Bob, okay? And you can see again that that doesn't resonate with his entire being, okay? That's really what we're after. Okay, so we know this particular water, and you can see, is our beautiful spring water. So he's going to hold that to his solar plexus and go ahead, and you can see there's strength there. Okay, so here comes our big test. He is going to hold on to this spring water. Now, He's taken the next 5 minutes or so to work with it. And what we're going to see is, look at that. Okay. And you can see that that intention that he had, thank you, David, that was amazing. Again, I had no idea if that was going to work. I just really didn't. But he had the intention to just pray over the water with that intention, and really the water changed. Okay. I know Chris off camera here, and you see why I'm looking away, is Chris really wants to try this particular practice as well. And what's interesting is that this particular practice can actually be used almost for anything. What you can do, and I'll give you guys this little practice, is if you are curious about if something is not good for you, or if you have an allergy, what you actually can do is to stand and put that particular item at your solar plexus. And what you would do is you stand in those foot triangles that we taught you last time. You take an inhale and then very gently exhale and allow the body to relax. Now, again, this doesn't work for everybody, but it might work for you. If this item is good for you, what you will find is that the body kind of falls forward towards it. That your energetic body really says yes. If it was neutral, what you'll find is that the body stays still. And if it's no good for you, the body will actually fall backwards. And this can actually be done with particular items within your home, or if you're curious about if something is an allergy for you. Okay. I've often find myself crazy in the grocery store figuring out whether I should choose that particular vegetable or particular fruit. And it's actually really helped me to pinpoint down some things that I was curious about whether I was allergic to or not. And it really pinpointed it back. And this particular practice can really be done. So that really will end our practice together today. Just to really have that thought again, that we are a community of beings, that we as humans are not the end all be all, that we are simply animals and hopefully stewards of Earth, and that we can remember that we are all one, that we are all connected, that humans, animals, microbial and botanical are all united by the common bond of water. And so then the next time you come onto the farm, hopefully you can use some of these techniques of really grounding down through your body, through your feet, and being able to stand tall, and then taking a moment to use your breath, and perhaps even to imagine the water, and then imagining that that sentient being in front of you has everything that you have, that you are not superior to them, that you're just different from them. And hopefully what you'll find, and what I've definitely found in my work with animals, is that when I come into this state of being, it changes. And it so quickly changes. And that it really helps me to connect on a more profound level with the animal that I'm working with. And so it's not just, yeah, I, feed the horse and I give it a pet. It's more, I see you, I honor you. So in our yoga practice, we actually end with the words of namaste. And what that really means, very loosely translated, means that the divine light within me sees the divine light within you and respects and loves that divine light. And that we know and that we connect to that other divine light. So even just that, as we approach the animals, that I see you, that I respect you, that I maybe even love you. And thank you for the work you do. So again, going back to those 2 pieces of homework for you as the wonderful volunteers at Kindred Farm is some signage of how we can be a little bit more present before we enter into the enclosures. And then second is some love notes to create some love notes for the animals. And even if you think any of this work that we did today is a little bit too woo-woo-woo-ish for you and a little bit too metaphysical, that even just how good does it feel when someone tells you that they appreciate you? How good does it feel to you to know that you are loved and to have kind words spoken to you? How good does it make you feel? It's no different than any of us. Good. So thank you very much for sharing this time with me today. I really appreciate it. So I'll end with saying namaste, and I will unmute everybody, and then you can get an opportunity to ask some questions or if there was any comments. Okay. Thank you. Okay, great. Welcome.
Hi, Janine. I just really have to say something. This was great. I've been a massage therapist for 25 years. I'm not now, but I used to do craniosacral therapy, and
Yeah.
it really does work. You can feel the bones of the cranium, the sutures move. There is a rhythm when you tune into it. Miracles happen there. Also, muscle testing that looks really fake when you see it on a video like this. It looks, oh yeah, well that's just. But it is very real. It is very real. I've done it. I do it all the time. And I've done it in my practice for eons. And I do it also in the grocery store, just like you do for vegetables. But just even anything that you want to know, is this true for me? Is not true about somebody else? It works. And like the pressure. There's no pressure on pushing down. It works. It really, really does work. So thank you for real eyes again to everything I believe in, but I've kind of been in the, I've kind of let it pass me by lately. And it's reignited that fire in me. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, they've done some interesting work, and it's called the Emotional Code, and you can look that up on YouTube. They got some really great videos, and they use muscle testing to discover if you have any suppressed emotions inside of you. So we know that we are really subterranean in our brains, that we are really subconscious. We talked about that last time. We're only 5% conscious and 95% subconscious. And sometimes we have suppressed emotions that we don't even know are there. And they use this applied kinesiology and something called, again, the emotional code to help you uncover and discover any suppressed emotions inside of you. So they're really doing some fascinating work. And you can even do applied kinesiology to animals. So which is really interesting. So I know Chris and I are going to start to work together a little bit more, working with some energy and working with some quantum and some Reiki energy with the animals on the farm.
How do you do muscle testing with animals?
Well, it's a little bit different. It's not like you can get the horse to push down its arm, right? But it's a little bit easier with cats and dogs, especially your own cats and dogs, a little bit easier. But it's really those same techniques of when something is really not good for the animal, that there's going to be a particular reaction to certain things. That's really the idea behind it. But they actually kind of let you know a little bit more than us as humans, right? If you have I hesitate to use the word pet. I don't like that word. But if you have an animal or a companion at home, they're sometimes really evasive to things, and they actually let you know, even though it may not seem logical to you, that I don't want that, or I'm not going to do that, or that's not right for me. Or We've seen it before where they act that way in front of humans, or if you've ever had a dog and all of a sudden they didn't want to go walking down a certain path. Why would that happen? So there's so much that we really don't know. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Good. Any other questions?
My left brain is asking if I write a note to one of the animals, do I bring it and read it to the animal?
You can. Yeah.
I was thinking, like, if there was an animal laying down, I'd put it underneath them.
Well, we're going to be putting them under their water dish.
Oh, okay, okay.
So they may not last long.
No, I just think
we might have to get like a group what is it, lamination deal at come in with 25 notes and can you get these all laminated, please? So maybe we can get a group special at Staples or something to get them laminated. But to put it under their water. And to see if we can shift the vibrational tone of the water that we are giving to them. And they actually, I know I haven't really told you a lot about me and what I do. So I'll take a moment to tell you a little bit about that so you can get a better idea, because here I am just jumped onto screen talking to you guys. But I've been working for over 16 years with people. And I'm a holistic therapist, and I specialize in yoga therapy as well as emotional freedom technique or tapping. And I also do quantum work as well as a Reiki master and a lot of other things on the side, like Thai yoga massage, and the list just kind of goes on and on.
Much longer.
And then on the animal side, I'm a certified animal Reiki practitioner, which is really different than just regular Reiki. There's very specific things for animal. And I also do crystal healing with animals as well, working with crystals and elixirs and love notes and those types of things. But I've also working with animal communication, in particular cats, horses, and dog communication. And right now I am studying to become an animal bereavement counselor.
Wow.
To really help people. And I've actually had a couple wonderful opportunities to actually be a doula, to help clients that were near the end with their beloved and had a transition over, and then the counseling piece at the end. So yeah, I know. Chris and I've been talking about that, with some of the animals on the farm. And really, it's kind of an underserved part of our community, and that they are such an important part of our lives. And so to really have that piece into our practice. So yes, so you'll probably be seeing me around the farm a little bit more soon.
Great.
And so I work with both people and with animals. So if you want to follow me on my Instagram for my animals, it is Holistic Animal Living on Instagram. So that's what you can follow me on my Instagram and my Facebook, Holistic Animal Living. I'm creating a brand new website for that. So the website should be out soon, and hopefully with the recording. And then with people, I'm under Inner Glow Holistic Therapy, and that's under Facebook. And as well, my brand new website called innerglowtherapy.ca will be coming out soon as well. So we're just revising everything as I get new training. And so if you do want to get a hold of me for either the animal work or the human work, you can definitely, relay through Chris, and she can get you a hold of me. Okay? So I'm going to give it back to you. Go ahead.
Are you able to practice with people right now?
No.
Yeah.
No, that's a little difficult because the work that I do is very hands-on.
Yes, yes.
I'm very, because I'm very energetically sensitive, Zoom is difficult for me to do. So the work I do is definitely more one-on-one with people. So that works out better. So hopefully that'll change in time. And even if we had to do with masks and gloves,
Right.
and a little distance,
Right. Yeah.
that would be okay. But it's not ideal. So hopefully, yeah. So
I
at
have
this
heard
time, I'm not working.
The 19th, it sounds like they're loosening up some things like massage therapy.
Yeah. So hopefully, yeah. Because with the yoga therapy practices that I do, it's very, very hands-on. Practice, and it's not like yoga at all. It's really a very therapeutic practice, which would be more likened to almost a physiotherapy practice, but with all the benefits of yoga in the sense of breath, mindfulness, and really being in touch with something greater than ourselves. So all those practices are brought forward. And that's even the same thing when I work with animals, is that idea that I am no better than, and I'm no less than, but we are all in this together. So that's always my notion of whatever I'm doing and whoever I'm working with. Yeah.
Just a really quick question.
Go for it.
How does EMDR fit in with what we've been talking about?
Well, I'm going to hand that off to Chris, because she's definitely, the clinical counselor, and would have a little bit more insight in that into me. I have my own views, but she's definitely the expert on that, right? So we will let her answer that for you. So I will end my portion here by saying thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
Thank you very much.
And we'll hand it off to Chris, and you can ask that question. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you, Janine. In deafness, we would do this instead of this, because they can't hear this, so we go like this in deafness.
Okay.
So, yay, Janine. Yeah.
Chris, before you start, can I just share something with that Janine did? I don't know if Janine can hear still.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so while you were talking, Janine, I put the word peace on the bottom of my water. And when she started talking about the animal, I'm going to cry now. When she started talking about the animals, about pick them up, talking about them if they're angry or lonely, I just started to have tears right away. So it was just interesting that I picked peace, and that as she was listing up, the ones that are isolated or lonely or injured or whatever it is, that the tears just actually started falling right away. And it was just sort of really interesting, because I'm just, sitting, we're talking, and I just not even sort of being like, or just aware of it, but just knowing that I needed to be peaceful with it. So it was kind of interesting. Anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. Peace is a good word.
Anyways,
yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Awesome.
I think you made us all cry now.
Oh,
yeah, I know. I think we could spend a lot of time on this together as a community, as we're thinking about our individual animals. And, I'm just wondering what animals came to your mind. I mean, just off the bat when Janine was talking, and of course Chase comes up, and then I know people are, scared of Barney, and then, like the rabbits, some have connected to the rabbits, but, I know I tend to ignore them because, just let the bunny people do that, so I'm just in my own head, I'm kind of categorizing, Dougie is so sweet and you just want to, but Cedar maybe, not the same cuteness or what, I don't know, I'm just sort of going through all my own, who do I have these strong connections to, and boy, those girl ducks are sure cute, but I don't know about those boy ducks, I don't, and my own way of thinking about all the animals. So I think it's, not just the ones we're drawn to and we love, but who are the ones that we tend to ignore too. And it's impossible to be connected to them all, for sure. Like I would just go crazy for sure. But I think that's where I'm wanting to turn to. It's so easy to go to the ones that I'm connected to.
Right.
But the ones that I'm not connected to, maybe I have to think about that a little bit, and what is it about them, and why, and but yeah, those are the ones that I think I want to reach out to over the next coming weeks too.
Right.
So well, I'll just answer that question about the EMDR, because I know it's called eye movement desensitization. I don't know what the R stands for. Yeah, reprocessing. Okay. So it's about, memories that happen during a traumatic event are stored in a different part of the brain. And so they're not processed like our typical memories. So there's something about, your eye muscle and the movements of the eyes. And if you can shift your eye muscle while you're thinking about the traumatic event, it's supposed to move it to another part of your brain so that it can be processed and it can be remembered as a memory and not trigger the trauma effect in the body. So it's not about forgetting it or anything like that. It's just about, it's not going to re-traumatize you every time it comes into your memory, your thought process. So it's an expensive training, and it's a pretty intense training to get that as a therapist, which I have never had. So I like to work with people who have that training too, because I think it goes hand in hand with talk therapy too, or so it's kind of a nice and then what was that, the emotional freedom tapping. Yeah, and that's the tapping, right? That's the tapping. So then there's the thing that Janine had talked about, was the tapping, and it is about thinking about the event and then triggering another part of your brain, so that, and so she does the there's tapping, there are different meridians of tapping that can shift the brain. Right. There's so much we don't understand about the brain, but it's quite complex.
I know I've had some basic training in it when I was working, but I've also had it myself, and it definitely
it helped.
Yeah. For me, it was getting rid of that monkey brain and focusing in so that you can put everything else out and process what it is that really is the issue. It's an interesting concept, but I see it as connecting with everything that we're talking about here today.
Yeah, it is.
In a way.
Yeah. There's so many. There are a lot of really great strategies for helping people to recover from events, and the children that come here, their trauma is more chronic. It's a chronic developmental trauma, and so those kind of techniques don't work quite for them. So it's the mindfulness and the groundedness and the attachment therapies and all sorts of things that.
Well, I think there's so much that happens in our previous lives that we wouldn't necessarily see as traumatic, but actually was traumatic for us as a child
at the time, depending on where we were developmentally and stuff. Exactly. So maybe if we're good with our homework, Janine will come back for part 3 or something, or we'll see what happens with that. But I will definitely maybe start a different discussion thread about this homework, and we can maybe share ideas and thoughts. The idea with the signage, we've had the stop sign. We were using that with the children's program, and that was basically a stop sign that said stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed with your plan, or what's your plan kind of thing. And but the problem with signage is once it's up there for a little while, we don't see it anymore, and we just go back. So I think we're going to have several strategies that we kind of change up and switch up so that, we see that again, and become aware of it. So we're going to need a few different things that we can switch up and help each other with. Because, I am just as much at fault as anybody, just plowing into a space. And so we can help each other.
Interesting what Linda was saying too, with the knowledge you have, Linda. it's somehow, sometimes you let that drift away from you. And so kind of revisiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, boy, that's slowing down and stuff. So, and then Anna, poor Anna, you know, she's having to put all of her great techniques and everything on video, and, you know, a whole new format, which is, and that even takes, you know, that takes you out of the moment, because you're thinking, how am I going to get this GoPro? And am I walking too fast? Am I doing this? And now, you know, just the process of trying to change what we do into a video format, which is not our, you know, it's not what we do. Now it's becoming mechanical again instead of being in the moment. And I know that's added a lot of stress to you.
Can we just have a quick update from Anna on what she's doing?
What's that?
All over the place, Anna.
You know what? I will give you it, but I think let's just finish with this part.
Yeah,
first,
yeah,
if that's
yeah.
okay. Yeah, let's just, So, okay. Good.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, any more? And if there was going to be a part 3, would there be anything more that you guys would want to hear about? Or anything?
Maybe delve even deeper into some of what we've already, I mean, I wasn't there on part 1, unfortunately.
We will get this all.
But
We will
delve
get this all.
even deeper into some of the things that she covered this time, because there's so much more to know about all that stuff. And
yeah.
How about part?
So, yeah, the whole idea of, you know, the water molecules and stuff like that is just phenomenal when you think of it. Yeah.
I found it really interesting when Janine was talking about the water sounds, and I think about the young mums that put these sound machines on so their babies can get back to basic, that sound of water to block out outside noise, and it
that
helps.
White noise.
They're really cool machines that my daughters use for their babies and putting them to sleep.
It's to help.
I'd have one that blocks out my husband snoring with wave sound.
But
it
when you're speaking of that, it's actually because it's very, very loud in the womb.
Yes.
And babies are constantly hearing your digestive juices, the heartbeat,
yes, the water, but the water machine,
So they're actually hearing,
yeah,
you know, like beep, 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 and all this stuff inside.
It's cool. It's so cool.
It's really, really loud. And that what a lot of young moms do, the mistake they go is
really
that
quiet.
they go, okay, everything needs to be quiet. The baby's sleeping, and that they're actually setting them up for disaster when they get older, because
when the world isn't quiet,
what world is quiet, right? And that by doing the white noise is very comforting to a baby because it's what they already know.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I turn it up really, really loud, and then it helps me sleep, but it keeps saying, wait.
Well, it does something with the central nervous system though too, and babies, you know, that what they're trying to do coming out of the womb is to regulate into this world. You know, when you're in the womb, you're not hungry, you're not cold, you're not tired.
Everything's taken care of.
It's all taken care of, and now you're out there, and your central nervous system is trying to do all that regulation, and that's their primary goal. And so there's something about that constant noise that helps to regulate the central nervous system. So and that was the one when I was doing the ocean breath, I felt like I was snoring. Did you guys? Like I felt like I was snoring. Like it kind of felt like, when I'm sitting on the couch, I kind of go to half to sleep. I'm breathing like that.
It's very comforting. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. All right.
Just made my
you guys want to
day.
hear what Anna's doing, or is there any more on that? Or
Sure.
Yeah.
put me on the spot, Marilyn. Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
You walking around with your
Anna, no.
I just find that you're I've noticed you filming quite a bit, and then I really think you're good at it. Like you just seem to capture the animals so well.
Oh, thanks. Well, as Chris was saying, sort of the transition from just sort of being in the moment and being at the farm and with the children's programs, unfortunately, they're unable to be at the farm with us and go through and experience what we do at Kindred and how the animals are helpful in healing. And so we're attempting to put on the platform, and Lindsay's been doing the same thing with meditation and putting it online with the animals and for the kids. And so just giving them an opportunity to see what they would be doing at Kindred with each of the animals. And I've filmed with a couple of the volunteers in terms of the animal specific, in terms of care and how to be with them and introduce them to the sit spot. So we're starting to get that, Kindred for Kids and an online platform so that they can weekly see it for the kids that we would be that would be coming. So the kids that missed the opportunity to be at Kindred, they'll have the opportunity to access that, and then as well as the other children that have also been to Kindred Farm. So they'll be able to see sort of weekly videos about Kindred Farm and going.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Hannah.
And for kids who have been here before, and they will remember what it feels like to be here.
Right.
And so I think to see the pictures and the and brushing it will bring back their memory of being here. And so I think that will help. For kids who have never been here, it'll be more educational, fun, isn't that cute, kind of thing. But it's so hard to think how do you capture the feeling of being here, and so I don't think that's possible on an online format. So I think we have to keep that, but there definitely is, this will be something that will stay up on our website and will be available to the general public. Will we charge for it, or will we, like other sanctuaries are, creating curriculum for kids and stuff. And maybe that's a way that we can stay, in partnership with the schools too, is to create this sort of, what do farm animals need, or, living on the farm kind of thing, curriculum for kids at the schools. So that's where I see, all the work that we're doing now as we move forward, that could benefit, kids who can't come here in general
that
too.
maintains the connection.
Yeah. And we still, it's like what, Ginny was saying about the stewardship and stuff like that. Like, how do we, make the animals, real and sentient and in their feelings and stuff. So I think it's all good. It's all going to be very helpful moving forward. We'll just keep refining it. And, but yeah, it's pretty, even, it's pretty frustrating and very time consuming. And it's a learning curve, for both of us. And it's not the same as being the counselors that we are, and
No. And yet it probably, for the children who are listening to it that have never been to the farm, it can pique some interest.
Yeah.
And Anna, the way you approach people and animals in general, you convey a sense.
Oh yeah, she's
to the
so
children.
kind. Yeah, she's
that they can pick up on and say, boy, when I can go to that farm, I'm going to go to that farm.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully not too long.
Yeah, let's hope so.
All right, thank you guys for the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for organizing that, Chris.
And we'll get the videos up for sure, and then I'll start just a homework sheet, and we'll get those love notes out on the in the water bowls. That will be, that will be fun, right? That will be fun.
Put them in a Ziploc bag and put them under there.
Yeah. Every blue bucket's going to have a love note under it for sure. Yeah.
Great to see everybody's face.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye. You too.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
I love you in sign language.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh my gosh.
gosh, it's another o'clock. We gotta get in. I know you did. Yeah. Let's get started. Is this mine? Yeah.